So, so then text. If it's a foreign language, then you have problems, and make sure that you're accomplishing them. And if it's in English, you have probably more problems. But then you can add the text, and then at the very end, if it hasn't already happened, then musical expression. So we're probably going to stave off the desire to make everything incredibly expressive and incredibly beautiful until we know the notes and the rhythms, until we know the words. Now, you can, depending on the level of the choir, you can accomplish a lot of those things at the same time. Or maybe you do notes and rhythms and text, or maybe you do, you add musical ideas earlier on. I believe in that. But I'm also a real believer in nonsense syllables early on. And nonsense syllables, I love O's and Oo's, because those are sounds that we don't always make very beautifully. So if we can sing something on an oo or an o, the sound will be warmer. My experience has been the sound becomes warmer earlier on. My also experience is working with tenors and basses. If it's out of tune, go to an E vowel and it will fix everything right away. Maybe not everything, but most often. Because the E vowel in the tenor bass voice focuses it more, and things, flatness tends to go away a little more than it does with an O or an U. And I avoid the A vowel if at all possible, because there are so many different A's. Yeah, if you live in Chicago, you have that one. If you live in Michigan, you have this one. If you live in New York, you have this one. If you live in Georgia, you have that one, the Ah. So we have to make those our own when we're working on the text. Okay, so as much as, next point, as much as possible, speak in solution language. For instance, if there's something that's flat, for instance, rather than saying, altos, you're flat in bar 72, let's say, altos, could you raise the pitch in bar 72? Altos, could you make sure that that F sharp is a little higher in 72? As opposed to, that's flat, that's under the pitch. If you can say the solution, that's always better than saying the problem. You hear the problem. If you're a good listener, you'll hear the problem. And people, contrary to our belief as conductors, people don't sing out of tune to harm us or to cause us great mental angst. But it's because they're approaching a leap in a less than wide way. They're not listening to what needs to happen, with the left hand of the pianist or the feet of the organist or the basses of the choir, whatever. The lowest, maybe they can't hear the lowest sounding pitch, because that's to whom we always tune, the lowest sounding pitch. So the lowest sounding pitches have to be always in tune. If it's an SATB choir, then the basses always have to be tuned. If it's an SAA choir, the second A's always have to be in tune, because that's to whom we will listen. If it's in the orchestra, it's the double basses and the cellos. And if they are rushing or going slower than needs to be, they will determine that. So solution-based language as much as possible. I will say from experience that is not an easy habit to develop, but it is a really helpful habit to develop it, because we automatically hear what's wrong and we want to say what's wrong rather than skip that step and go to how it can be remedied. Next point, imagine before you sing. Encourage the singers. Imagine before you sing. And then inhale with the character of the phrase that you're singing. And adding to that, inhale the first vowel that you're singing. Amateur choirs tend to take a breath to start singing. They tend to take a breath to sing the first pitch. Great singers, experienced singers, inhale in the character of the phrase that's coming up and in the shape of the first vowel. So if it's he watching over Israel, as opposed to he watching over, they will sing in the character of the phrase coming up. I'll often say that it's a little like stepping on a moving sidewalk at an airport. If you step on, it jerks you. But if you're going at about the speed of the sidewalk, he watching over, then you're simply joining it. And the same is true with the first phrase that you sing, and the same is true when you inhale. inhale in the speed, in the tempo, in the emotional content, in the in the articulation of the music that's coming up. First of all, it's more beautiful. And second of all, everything lines up better. I would really, this is I think the next point, don't tell them it's hard. It's easy to say, oh, we're going to work on this really hard piece and you're going to love it. Let them figure out if it's hard. Let them avoid that concept. It might be unbelievable. And, you know, nothing is hard. We've all worked on pieces that by the time we got to the concert, it was fantastic. And at first it was challenging. It was tricky. Maybe there were some intervals that we hadn't experienced before. Maybe there are rhythms that needed to be aligned and lived with for a while. But if someone says to me, this is going to be really hard, it will be hard.